California's Gold is produced in association with KCET Los Angeles and is seen statewide on California Public Television. This series is endorsed by the California Teachers Association, the California School Boards Association, and the California Library Association. Well, hello everybody, I'm Huell, and right now we are standing at one of my favorite places in all of California. We're here at the San Diego Maritime Museum, which is located right on the bay here in downtown San Diego. Now, there are all kinds of neat ships here, big historic ships. But we are not here to look at the big ships. We're here to spend the whole day looking at little bitty ships. Ships that are so small they can fit inside a bottle. And when they're inside these bottles, they become fine examples of California's gold. Okay, our adventure begins. We're here at the San Diego Maritime Museum. Our tour guide for this adventure is Don Hubbard. Don, you are the president and chief bottle washer, pardon the pun there,
you got
for
it.
the, what's the name of the organization?
Ships and Bottles Association of America.
So there are lots of people who care about and are interested in ships in a bottle.
Absolutely. We have organizations here. The Japanese have a huge one. The Europeans have one. The British have one. The Netherlands have their own. So there's a lot of ship and bottle builders around the world.
Well, this is an amazing exhibit here at the museum, and I've got a million ships in a bottle questions to ask you. And I think the first one is, when did this start and why did it start? What's the history of ships in a bottle?
Well, it actually didn't start with a ship in a bottle. It started with a mining scene in a bottle, done by a German fellow named Matthew Buchinger in 1716. That's the oldest model we've ever found.
A mining
scene, 3 levels of a mine with little people working machinery. And this fellow is an interesting fellow because he was handicapped. He had very short arms and did this sort of work, incredibly hard work, you know, knowing the miniaturization he had to do. But there are 2 models that he built. They're both in England, I think in Dover. But the real impetus on this came when the sailing ships started to go out to sea and bottles became available. That was the second key.
See, I've always thought that it was sailors who did it because they had a lot of time on their hands while they were at sea. And this was something they could do when they were sitting around at night on a ship.
Quite true, quite true. But also people who are isolated. I have one scene over here. It's a crucifix built by a lumberman. They were isolated in the woods, and so they did them too. So you get a mixture. But the cross-pollination came about in the old sailing ships when a sailor from, let's say, Italy would sail on a ship that went out of Portugal. Then he would learn it from him, and then maybe his next ship was going out of England. So when I did my research on this, I found that around 1830, they really began to emerge as an art form.
Now, these, when you say art form, were these truly art forms, or were these just hobbies that were not taken very seriously?
It's a very good question, because it was not an art form. These old guys didn't know anything about proportion. They didn't really know how to get the mass in proportion to the hull. So the result is that most of the early models are quite crude. Almost none of them have sails on them because they didn't have the paper or the cloth to do it. So you can pretty much tell when you see a really old model that the bottles are kind of got bubbles in them, and they're out of proportion.
Well, you said it was hard even to get the bottles back then.
Yeah, that's right. I guess a sailor always has a bottle of rum somewhere.
All right, well, let's take a look, because you got so many here, and I'm looking right over your shoulder. This really, you know, kind of points up that this is very non-traditional in many ways. You've got a ship and a flash bulb here.
Right away we're non-conforming. And this particular gentleman, Jack Hinckley, I know him quite well, most of his models are in light bulbs.
Now, how do you get a model in a light bulb?
With great difficulty, as they say.
Do you take the end off?
Yeah, you have to cut the end off. You have to have 2 light bulbs, and there are ways to soak them off, but basically you take a little motor tool and you cut the metal, and then you can get it off and get the elements out. Then you take another ball, break it, and glue on the new socket.
So this is a lot of sleight of hand here as well.
Well, we're trying to get an illusion. That's what we're really after.
Absolutely. Look over here. Now this is not a ship in a bottle. This is a shipwreck in a bottle.
Well, you know, most of these guys have a sense of humor. They really do. And this is what he did. He wrecked this ship and put it back in a bottle that way, and that's what it is.
So there are no rules.
No, you can do anything you want.
Let's just walk down here and look.
This is an interesting one right here. Leon is a British man who builds these things, and the British Navy commissioned him to build one model for each of the Navy ships, the British Navy ships. Of course, they didn't have that many ships, but this is the Pusso's rum bottle that they used to serve rum on board ships. This is what they used.
So lots of times these bottles are as significant as the ships inside the bottle.
Now, you talk to any ship and bottle guy, and when he goes in the liquor store, it's not the liquor, it's what the bottle looks like.
And a lot of these are old bottles as well?
Some of them are. I mean, but most of these are modern bottles. This is a dimple bottle. It's a classic. This is a classic ship and bottle.
Now, what do you mean a classic ship?
A lot of people like these. They let you see the model very easily because the thing is sloped back slightly, and they have they're concave so that you get closer to the model.
But you see, this is kind of a classic bottle too, isn't it? It's flat.
It's a flask, is what it is. And another interesting thing about this was built by Robin Harris. She's one of my 3 lady ship and bottle builders.
Is California a big ship in the bottle place?
We do have more ship and bottle builders in California than any state in the union.
Really?
Yeah, I happen to know that from my membership.
Now, why is that?
I don't know. Well, it's a big state, for one thing.
When people think of ships in a bottle, they think of traditional ships, sailing ships in a bottle.
That's right.
They do not think of a truck in a bottle.
No, and this was built by a gentleman back in New Jersey. He only does trucks and bottles, and he used to make them for executives in the retiring from Mack Truck and so forth. But one day he got a commission from UPS to build 8 UPS trucks. And he said, I've never been so bored in my life. Not that there's anything wrong with UPS, but the brown truck, and they're all identical. The challenge, I think one of the challenges here is, how do I do this? It's not patience, I want to know how to do it. And once you've figured it out, you don't care to do the same model again.
Logistically, you have to figure out how to make this work.
That's right.
How fragile? Can I pick this up?
Oh, sure, yeah.
I mean, how fragile are these things?
No, they're very tough. They're very tough.
Are they glued down?
Yes,
you don't want them to move around.
They're all cemented in there, and he builds this just like they do in Detroit. He builds a chassis, he builds an axle. The wheels are too large to go through the hole, so he cuts them off center so he doesn't destroy the hole, then re-cements them in the bottle, and then puts them on the axis. And then each piece of this thing is put in separately, and then you can't see it because the paint's over it, but the same with the top. They are all little strips of wood that are put in one after another. You can barely see I don't think you can see it in the movie.
This is so meticulous.
It's absolutely lovely.
Like this.
And he sent this to my first show in 1982, and I said, do you sell these things? And he said, yeah, I'll sell it to you for $35, and I couldn't get my wallet out fast enough.
Wow, I mean, that would take weeks, months to make something like that.
Terribly long time.
Now we're getting into the traditional. Now here's a good old ship in a bottle, these 2 right here. Now that's about as classic as it gets,
and they're charming. They really are charming. And they're big. You can see it's a fairly large jug, and gives them a little more room in the neck.
That looks like a big apple juice jug or something like that.
Well, wine bottle, I think. But let's be nice to these guys.
Say it's apple juice. Now here's one, a guy in a bottle.
Yes, this is built by a Canadian fellow, and you see, you got a dog underneath the table, and he's working on this model up here, and there he is standing there doing his job. And of course, what he had to do, he had to make that man in a lot of little pieces and insert them, and then glue the pieces together once they got them inside the jug.
And you're right, sometimes it's hard to get perspective when you're looking through a bottle, isn't it?
Yeah,
it kind of diffuses your view.
It's a problem when you're trying to do detailed work. You have to, I put on sometimes I put 2 pair of glasses on, and you don't dare open the door when somebody rings the bell because you look pretty funny.
This is a whole scene that this man has established
Yeah,
here.
John Burton is a British fellow. He used to be the president of their association, but he built a James W. Fisher, and then he put a dock scene here, which is just wonderful. All these little people and things happening, small the windows in the buildings, and then he painted clouds on the back, and this becomes a diorama rather than just a ship in a bottle.
That is amazing. Now, is this something new? Would this have been done back in the 1800s? It's probably evolved over the years.
One of the evolutionary things. Yeah, the art died out until sometime around the Depression, about in the 30s. It came back again, probably because people were out of work and they were trying to keep busy and maybe make a few dollars.
Yeah.
And since that time, the innovations that have come in, better glues, wonderful threads that we now have out of nylon and so forth, it just made it so much easier to do more advanced things.
Is this a cat in a bottle?
That is a cat in a bottle, and
look at this.
That was made, it was from a New Yorker ad. Somebody gave it to me as a present.
Can I pick this up?
Oh, sure.
I'm always afraid to.
No, they're pretty tough.
A cat in the bottle, and there's spilled milk down there. Now, this is clever.
Thinking.
But I don't know whether this has the same cachet as a ship in a
really,
bottle.
but you know, if you collect them, it's just one more little thing to add. It's like this one here, which is this was a prisoner model. I bought this in Ensenada for $3 a couple of years ago.
This is a what model?
A prisoner. Some prisoner made this in a jail down in Ensenada.
I never had thought about that. Yeah. They got plenty of time on their
hands. So they
hands.
got time on their hands, and then this is what I bought. It's kind of cute for $3, you know. And this one is what they call a whimsy.
A whimsy?
Whimsy is a little different than a ship in a bottle because it's not a ship in a bottle. It's just somebody's thoughts of what to do. And it was made down in Kwajalein. A friend of mine who's a research, works on a research ship, went down there, found this, got a piece of coral, and then somebody cut these little fish and glued them on.
There's a plane in a bottle.
This was built by a fellow named Bob Frederick, who was an aviation machinist mate in World War II. And that is a torpedo plane like the first President Bush flew over Chichijima and was shot down on. And it's even got a little torpedo being loaded underneath. And I just really love this model.
I'm just looking at all of these. What is this with this? What is all of this?
Vic Crosby was down at the yacht pool watching these fellows sail their radio-controlled yachts, and they were chiding him about building ships in bottles, and he said, well, I can build one that floats and goes too. So that's what he did. He has an electric motor in here and a little radio-controlled device, and he put this in the water, and it goes down, floats at this level.
So he's powering a ship in a bottle.
It floats around just like the rest of them. You can make it turn right or left.
Oh, and here is this is the religious scene you were talking about.
That's right. This was made by a lumberman somewhere up in Saddle area, Washington State. And you can see it's very crude, but this is something that he used to pass time out in the woods.
This is folk art right here.
Yes, folk art, exactly what it is.
Is that part of the attraction of ships in a bottle that when you see them, you immediately try to figure out how did they get that?
We all do. We all do. Wonder how he did that, so you can copy it, I guess.
An aircraft carrier in a bottle.
Absolutely. This is an aircraft carrier port. We've got 3 of them home based here.
But look, I'm looking at this. Here's what's interesting is they've got this piece of this anchor chain inside. So immediately you're asking, how did he get this piece of wood inside the bottle? That's one of those classic questions.
One of the classic questions is right. It's very difficult to do, but usually there are 2 separate small pieces sticking out which are attached by threads to a hollow piece of wood. And then when they get the thing inside, they pull a thread and pull those horns into the hole and then drop a glue on it.
Look at this. This is great. A guy inside the bottle trying to pull a ship in the bottle.
Yeah, this is also a sense of humor thing. The man that built these built something like 700, I think, and he was always looking for new things to do, and this was one of his very nice ideas.
Do people get hooked on building these things?
They do. I know his routine was to get up in the morning at 8 o'clock and work until noon every day.
You're kidding.
Every day.
Well, that kept him out of trouble.
It did indeed.
He built 700 of these things. Now here's one fiber optic ship in a bottle.
When we had the show on the Star of India in 1982, the Japanese sent 65 models, followed by 9 Japanese, and Japanese bring presents, and this was given to me by Mr. Ono. And it's fiber optics, and it has to be right over the light.
Oh, I got you.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh, wow.
But can you imagine the work that went into that?
Yeah.
Incredible.
Now down here, these take the cake. These teeny little ships in a bottle, and there's one with a penny in it. Now that one stumps me.
It stumps us all. The only way to do it is to blow the bottle around the penny. That's.
You're kidding, someone would blow?
You know, I think they do it commercially in large numbers. I've seen them in gift shops all over the country.
Look at this teeny. Look at this. Now, some people probably really like the challenge of this as opposed to a regular size bottle.
It's kind of fun to do. It's kind of fun to do.
You got to have good eyesight.
You do have to have that, and you have to have fairly steady hands. And just making the model outside the bottle is tough enough. Then you've got to get it in there.
So here's the ship in a bottle you built for your wife. It's got the biplane up on the top and the schooner down on the bottom.
Absolutely.
Now, is this one of the first that you built?
No, this was probably about my 20th, something in that area.
How many have you built?
About 80 last time I counted.
But there are people who built hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of these.
The largest collection is on the island of Aros in Denmark, a guy named Flask Peterson. And he has, I don't know how many hundred, but there's a museum that contains nothing but his models.
And a lot of these things become collector's items, don't they? I mean, they have their own pricing structure and desirability.
The Antiques Roadshow has an Antique Roadshow magazine, and last September they came out with an article about ships in bottles, Whimsies in bottles they called it. And they said that, you know, the commercial ones that you find in gift shops, probably $50 to $100, but the ones that are built on commission are considerably more money than that.
And if you found an old one that was 100 or 200 years old, they would be almost priceless.
Well, that's right. They can't be replaced.
Yeah.
Hard to get insurance on them. That's one of the big problems.
Yeah. Look at this. Ships and Bottles Association of Japan. The Japanese, you've already told us, are very big on ships in a bottle.
They not only have the largest association in the world, but they have more women. They have, I'd say, about a sixth of their members are ladies, and they do exquisite work, some of them.
Do they build them exactly the way we do?
If you look at them, you'll see one thing that's a glaring difference. They're in the bottle what we would consider backwards. The bowsprit is pointing towards the base of the bottle, and it's because Mr. Okada, who was the founder of the organization, who wrote 3 books, didn't know how it was done. He'd seen them in American area or European areas. So he invented a system where he put them in that way, pulled the mast back up, and then they hooked them to little hooks that are built into the deck or the gunnel. And it's an interesting technique. I've seen it done, but it's not something for me.
But basically the Japanese do it backwards.
Backwards, right, exactly.
Well, as long as the ship gets in there, that's what's important.
You got it.
What is the skill necessary to do this work?
It's like anything, depending on how much detail you want to do, it depends on how much skill is involved. The basic model just is not that difficult, but once you know the technique.
But I mean, is it wood carving?
You have to be able to carve wood. You have to work with very fine little drills. You have to be able to make the sails so they look authentic. For instance, when I make my sails, I dip the white paper in coffee. That gives it a little brown
Your
patina.
own little trick of the trade.
That's the trick of the trade.
But if I wanted to start making a ship in a bottle, is there a book, Ship in a Bottle 101, that you buy that anybody could just start from scratch?
I wrote one, Ships and Bottles, a step-by-step guide, and it was translated into German and it's sold around the world. But yeah, it's not that difficult. Just a basic model. And I encourage people to do it because it's a very wonderful way to pass time, and you have a feeling of accomplishment when you've gotten this thing. Not to mention the fact that it will probably be around 500 years from now. These things have a longevity that's incredible because they're encased in a bottle.
Okay, it's one thing to talk about ships in a bottle. It's another to actually watch a ship go in a bottle. And to do that, we've come to the workshop here at the San Diego Maritime Museum. Phil Matson.
Yep.
You're standing here with your protege. Introduce yourself to everybody.
Austin Jones.
Austin Jones. And we are getting ready. Tell us what you all have been working on, Mr. Matson.
Just putting a ship in a bottle.
Now, do you know anything about it? How did you get started on all this?
I just saw his and liked him, and then he started to teach me how to. And then now I'm doing it.
All right, and today's the big day.
This is the big day. Austin's been working quite a while. He's takes a little at a time we get together, and he's carved his ship. You can show them the ship, Austin.
All right, let's hold this thing up and take a look. Wow.
That's ready to go in the bottle.
Now, what is involved in making this ship? What kind of materials?
Well, it's it's a piece of soft wood, basswood or pine, and you draw on it what you want to carve, and then eventually, after you carve it, it looks like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get it down to where you carve it completely and put a deck in it with pencil, and then of course you've got to paint it with model paint. And Austin did all of this, went through all these steps.
Are these the materials over here?
Yes.
This is pretty heavy-duty stuff. Toothpicks, thread,
Yep.
and glue.
That's right, and glue and some oil paint. And Austin, what did we put in for the putty, do you know?
Just plain plumber's putty.
So just plumber's putty is all it is.
Yeah.
That's right.
All right, so let's get started. We're here for the big day. So how long has this taken you to get it up to this point?
4 or 5 months.
Yeah, we've only gotten together whenever we could, and at maybe an hour or 2 hours at a time, so it's been taking quite a while. So Austin, you want to try? This is our hope that everything will go in the bottle.
All right, so here's the ship. Let's watch what you're doing.
Okay.
So you compress it down. Oh boy, there it goes. There's probably a certain way to do this, isn't it?
It's hard. It has to be folded, and he's got. That's
Mr.
right.
Matson.
It's not unwrapped.
No, bowsprit.
What did it do? The bowsprit broke off.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a shame.
So we got to put glue on it.
Yes, but that's going to take a little while. I guess we can't finish with that one, Austin. He didn't know that was going to break off. But I have another model that Austin can show you here.
Well, now see, that probably happens all the time,
yeah,
doesn't it?
You've got to be willing to get up off the deck many times. In fact, as a young fellow, I told Austin about it when I did my first one. Sometimes I had to wrap a Turkish towel and get a hammer to get my boat back out again because I didn't measure right.
How many of these have you done in your lifetime?
Oh, I don't know that. I like to build model ships. I have maybe, I'm guessing at 30 or so. But the important thing here is for young people to see is what Austin did. He has to find a bottle wherever he can find it from somebody, a neighbor or whatever. And then what do you do next, Austin, after you find a bottle?
Find the design of ship you want to make and make it, and buy some toothpicks.
And what is this?
It's to measure the inside of the bottle.
So how do you do that? What do you do? Let's see what you're doing here. You have to measure how much room is...
Yeah. And just tighten on the thread.
So that's measuring the amount of
Then
room.
he can pull the toothpicks apart, bring it out, and go in again and he has a drawing
That's
here.
probably about the right size there. So.
And then he can come out and you can see the drawing.
Oh, here's the drawing over here.
Has to measure the inside of the bottle or you're in trouble if you don't know the size.
So there's a lot of math and
Planning.
physics
That's
and
right.
planning and everything going on here.
He's done a very good job. I'm so sorry that this bowsprit broke off.
But now you see, I mean, actually, this shows a couple of things. Number one, that this isn't staged. This is real
that's
television.
Right. Well, let me show
And
you.
it also shows the kind of things that happen when you work on this.
Austin, you show them this. There's the same kind of a ship. And you can do that and show them how that folds up.
Do you have your other bottle?
Yeah, but don't worry about that right now. Just
So what are we going to do? Just show how the ship folds up?
Yeah. This has a magnet on it, just to hold it there.
Oh, and it goes over. Then you would put it
I'm bringing the other bottle over that he didn't make. I made this years ago for the Boy Scout troops that my son was in, and you never cut a bottle open, but I had to have some way to demonstrate it.
Be careful.
Have to fold the yard arms up. Yeah, I had to have some way to get the ship out and be able to demonstrate it over and over again. So Austin is going to demonstrate that.
So here's his little pusher that he pushes it in with.
That's right. Just grab anything you can there. There you go. And it goes right on. There it is.
And then you have to bring the mast back up. And look, here's Austin pulling it up.
You may have to help it a little, Austin, with this. You may have to pull the mast a little bit.
Ah, yeah. Boy, it takes patience, doesn't it?
Well, I don't know if it's patience or you're determined you want to do it. And that drives you.
Well, now we're back outside with the big ships, but how much fun it was to spend the day looking at those little ships in bottles. And how wonderful it was to watch as Phil Matson shared his knowledge of ship bottle building with his young protege, Austin. Ships in the bottle and the people who make them. Fine examples of California's gold. You know, the Ships in a Bottle exhibit isn't on display anymore because the exhibits are constantly changing. But the workshop is always there. You can watch through the window as ships in a bottle are being made. And of course, it's always fun to visit the San Diego Maritime Museum, right on the waterfront. Well, hello everybody, I'm Huell Hauser, and if you enjoyed this adventure and would like to see it again or share it with family or friends, all you have to do is call 1-800-266-5727 and we'll be glad to send it to you right away.